Hello, everyone. Good afternoon and welcome to our webinar. We're just going to give everyone a couple seconds to join and then we'll get started. All right, looks like we've got a great amount of attendees. So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. Thank you for joining us. My name is Rachel Linton and I'm a Senior Administrative Coordinator at the Dell Center for Healthy Living. Today's webinar is hosted by the Michael and Susan Dell Center for Healthy Living at the UTHealth School of Public Health in Austin. Our vision is healthy children in a healthy world. Before we get started, I just wanted to make a couple of housekeeping announcements. So this webinar is being recorded and it will be archived along with our other presentations on our website at msdcenter.org. If you have any questions during the presentation, please enter them in the chat and we'll have a few minutes for a short Q&A at the end of the presentation. And with that, I'm excited to introduce our speakers today, Diana Guevara and Dolores Woods from our Nourish program located in Houston, Texas. The Nourish program aims to show people how to grow, prepare, and promote food that encourages lifelong health and well-being through hands-on evidence-based classes taught across their garden, kitchen, clinic, and community. Diana is the Community Health Education Specialist for the Nourish program and a graduate of our own UTHealth Dietetic Internship program. As a registered dietitian, Diana has worked primarily with patients with type 2 diabetes and has experience in individual counseling, nutrition education, cooking demonstrations, and cooking classes. Dolores is a nutrition supervisor for the Nourish program. She received her degree in culinary arts from the French Culinary Institute and has worked in the restaurant industry and taught cooking classes for several years. She holds a master's degree in food studies from New York University and earned her registered dietitian certification from California State University. And with that, I'll now hand it over to Diana and Dolores to start their presentation on making the healthy choice the tasty choice.
Okay, thank you so much for having us. Let me know if you have any problems hearing me. So I'm going to go ahead and start us off kind of talking about goals, goal settings, and really turning your goals into a plan. So we are now in February. We've made it through the January rush of having these big giant goals. Maybe some of us made it through the month, maybe some of us maybe didn't. So we just wanted to kind of present this information out for you guys to, see if you need to kind of get back on track on your goals or you want to consider setting new goals. We've got you, we're here. So I have a little ladder on our presentation. This is not my analogy. This is actually from Jay Shetty. I heard in his podcast and I thought it was so great. I wanted to share it with everyone here. So if you imagine that big overall health goal, a lot of times, it might come from our doctors. We want to lower our cholesterol, our blood sugar, our etc. We want to feel healthier, whatever our goal is. It can seem very overwhelming because it's this big giant goal. So if you think about a ladder, and if you have just that top step of the ladder, but the rest of the ladder is missing, that's kind of what we're doing when we set those big goals and don't make those smaller goals and those plans along the way. So what we're going to talk about today is having that big goal, keeping that in mind, but also how do we build that ladder to reach where we are today. So we are actually going to talk about SMART goals. So in my little ladder analogy, I think of that giant health goal as that top step. I think of SMART goals as the little steps in between. And then we're going to talk about plans, which is that final couple of steps that are actions that you can take today. So in terms of the SMART goals, it's that, if you haven't heard about it, it stands for specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound. And we'll talk through each of the letters. So specific is the first one. We want to focus on actions. So a lot of times when I would talk to my patients and they would come in, they had these goals that weren't really actions, they were goals. So it was something like, I want to get my A1C down, or I want to lose X amount of weight, etc. Those aren't necessarily actions that we can take today. Those are, outcomes that we're looking for. So focusing on specific actions, that'll be a way to help you build that next step in the ladder. So specific actions and really taking it one step at a time. So a specific action, instead of saying, you know, I want to lower my A1C or my blood sugar, let's talk about what actions can help you get there. So we can't go into our bloodstream and lower that blood sugar, but we can change the way we eat, we can change the way we exercise, and those are actually actions that we can take. So being really, really, really specific about what you actually want to do. Then we go into measurable. So actions are great, but if we can't measure if we've done it or not, then it doesn't really become a plan. It's just kind of a thought that we have out there. So defining how you're going to measure this, whether it's what portion size am I going to try to get, whether it's how many times a week do I want to do this activity, how long do I want to go for my walks, etc. So it helps you kind of give you that feeling of control, because you can say, I'm going to walk for 10 minutes every other day. That way you can sit down and say, did I walk for 10 minutes every other day, or did I not walk for 10 minutes every other day? So being able to measure it can just be really helpful and really motivating to keep you working towards your goals. Then we look at attainable. So, you know, goals are great, but if they're not something that we can actually achieve realistically, it doesn't make sense. So you want to choose something. You want to kind of meet yourself where you are. I feel like everyone is their own harshest critic. So a lot of my patients would come in and they would say, you know, I'm going to start eating really healthy every day, and I'm going to go for walks for 30 minutes a day, every single day. And that's a great goal in general. But if you don't go outside at all, and you're saying you're going to go for a walk every single day for 30 minutes a day, that doesn't seem very attainable to where you are right now. So how can we work our way up to that? So again, looking at that ladder analogy, the 30 minutes a day every single day might be a little too high on that ladder for you to reach right now. So work our way down to where you are right now, and that way we can eventually get there. And kind of with that is realistic, the R, and smart. So realistic is, how does it fit into your life? So if you are working 12-hour days and then you have to go pick up your kids and then you have to cook dinner for your family, and by the time you have a little me time, it's 9 p.m., you're probably not going to make it outside for a walk. So what are some realistic goals for you? How does this fit into your life? So maybe if we're not going to make it outside for a walk, can I do a 10-minute yoga video that I can find on YouTube? So that's a little bit more realistic for someone who can't get outside. So figuring out how it's going to fit into your life so that you can actually make it happen. So again, everything is kind of this unrealistic goal until we really bring it into, how am I going to make this happen? Is it attainable for me? Is it realistic for me? And then that's how we see change. And time bound. So consider giving yourself a time limit or just a time when you're going to do this. So kind of going back to realistic, if there's no little section in your life where this will fit, it's probably not going to happen, right? And then you're not going to feel great about yourself. So figuring out, where am I going to fit it in, and then stating that. So if we're back on that walking example, and we changed it to, I'm going to do a 10-minute yoga video on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for the next 2 weeks. So that way you actually have a plan. You're getting a little bit closer to creating that plan for yourself. So you know that on Monday, I'm going to have those 10 minutes, so I'm going to do that video. On Tuesday, I have a late night and this and that, so I'm not going to be able to do it, and that's okay, because on Wednesday, I'm going to do it again. So giving yourself really a detailed plan, getting very, very, very specific on, when am I going to do this, and when am I going to look back and see if I was able to reach my goal. And that is our SMART goals. So these are some examples of some SMART goals. So you might have this overall goal of, I want to eat more fruit. That might be higher up on the ladder. And then you really pare it down. I'm going to eat one piece of fruit at lunch 3 times this week. So you have your time. It's going to be this week at lunchtime. I'm going to eat one piece, so it's measurable. It's attainable for you. It might not be attainable for you. So if you want to switch it to, I'm going to do it once a week, you know, that might be where you're at, and that's okay. Or if you love fruit and you already have it 3 times a week, let's go up to 4 or 5 times a week. So really, how does it fit into your life? And if you're someone who doesn't eat lunch, then this might not be the goal for you. So really figuring out how it fits into your life. And so these are great goals. To get further down that ladder, you want to go towards, okay, let's make a plan. So you have your goal of, I will eat 1 piece of fruit at lunch 3 times this week. But if you didn't go grocery shopping, or you didn't pack your fruit, or you don't have access to fruit at work, then it's not going to happen. So bring it all the way down to where you are right now. So I'm going to take a look at my fridge and see if I have fruit. I'm going to plan out which fruits I want to eat this week. I'm going to put it on my grocery list. And that is an action that we can take right this moment. Because typically we're never as motivated as we are when we're making that initial goal. So if you bring it down to an actionable step, so an action that we can take right at this time, then that will bring you all the way down the ladder. So another example of our goals, I want to drink more water, getting really, really, really specific. I'm going to drink a glass of water before each meal for the next 30 days. So you have your time bound. It's 30 days before each meal. You know when exactly you're doing it, and it's going to be 1 glass of water. So this is very, very specific. You're measuring it. You can keep track with a little your planner or your phone or wherever. And at the end of the 30 days, you can know, yes, I was able to reach it, or no, I wasn't able to do it. And then reflecting on, okay, why didn't I get to do it? And that kind of goes into that realistic part of the goal. I wasn't able to do it because on Wednesdays, I work off site and there's no water available. Sometimes I forgot to bring my water bottle, so I had to drink something else. So now you know for next month or your next goal to kind of keep working up that ladder. Okay, so maybe Wednesdays don't work. What can I do to make Wednesdays work, or do I need to, do something else? So those are just some examples of some goals. And since we are both dietitians and we have a chef here, we're going to start talking about food next. So I'm just going to pop this over to Ms. Dolores.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Diana. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. So we're talking about these SMART goals, but now we want to talk also about how we can actually incorporate them into our eating and make some, something more practical. I know that, especially at the beginning of the year, as Diana had mentioned, we want to start these resolutions maybe and these goals, but we're not really sure how to start eating healthier. And, if we're going to our doctor's visits, maybe that's the first thing they tell us, well, you need to eat healthier, but what does that even mean? So we're going to give you some tips. We're going to show you some different ingredients that can hopefully help you start on that path to choosing some healthier items, especially for lunchtime. We're all working. Maybe some of you are working from home today, but you still have to eat your lunch, right? So it's important to think about healthy eating. So as I move forward, we're going to talk a little bit more about all of these ingredients and the display here. So as a foundation, one of the things that we always want to consider is to choose healthy fats. So some of those healthy fats we have here are some oil, maybe. We can show you some oils later, but definitely our plant oils. So anything like a olive oil, canola oil, avocado oil, even nut oils. There's so many oils out there that are going to be much healthier. Avocado is actually a great fat also, some nuts. All of those are going to be some foods that you want to choose to get some of those healthier fats instead of like the butter or, maybe some pork fat, lard. And a lot of times I know people don't really use lard to cook anymore, but when we're thinking about bacon, those types of foods, we just want to stay away from them and consider more of these healthier fats. We want to balance our protein intake. I know I hear all of these, people talking about high protein diets. You can name them. There are so many. And, for some people it may work, but we really want to think about balance. And that includes having some protein in your breakfast, your lunch, your dinner, depending on how many meals you're eating, breaking it up, because that's also going to help make you feel fuller for longer. So having some good quality protein is important. And again, we'll talk about what those examples are later. Fruits and veggies, those are always so important. We're not eating enough vegetables, so anytime you can incorporate more fresh, frozen vegetables into your meals, that's really important. Seasonality is super important. I really encourage everyone to eat seasonally. And that's because the food that is in season, especially right now, we're in winter, so we have some really great root vegetables. Some of our lettuces out there that are in season right now are kale, spinach. We have beets, turnips, parsnips. So there's all these root vegetables out there right now. They taste so much better when they're in season, and they're also less expensive. So, right now eating strawberries is not the best because they're just not going to be as tasty because they're not in season. They're getting shipped from South America or, the warmer places right now. And they're also going to be so much more expensive. So eating your fruits and vegetables that are in season, really important to have more of that flavor. Water intake. A lot of people just aren't drinking enough water. And so you'd be surprised at how many times you're dehydrated, but you're feeling a little bit hungry, maybe, a little peckish, but that's why water intake is so important, to get your water in, every day. As one of the examples was, maybe with your meal or as you wake up in the morning, that's something really important. You could flavor your water also. A lot of times it's hard for people to just drink plain water. So you could put some lemon juice in there, some slices of lime, or even frozen fruit. We really like to do some infused fruit water here just because it gives it a nice flavor without it being so plain. Managing stress. So this is very important, and it's not necessarily about food itself, but I know that a lot of people stress eat, right? And so it could be if you're under a lot of stress, it could be other emotions. Maybe you're upset, sad, right? A lot of times these emotions really play into our eating. And so finding ways that we can manage that stress, a different outlet so that we can manage the stress and not necessarily go to food to comfort us. So that's something that's really important, whether it's going out for a walk, maybe spending some time with family, with your pets, your children, different ways where you can just decompress. That's something that's really important. I like to knit, so a lot of times when I'm just feeling a little bit upset or stressed out, I go to knit, and that really is something that takes up a lot of my concentration, so I don't think about anything other than that. So, just finding something that you can do that is not related to food, really important, because we just tend to go for that comfort food when we are stressed out. And that ends up being a lot of times, that high fat, high salt type of food that we don't necessarily want to be eating too much of. The other thing is to allow for setbacks. So yes, we want all of these goals, right? We want to, build, get up on that ladder and build bigger goals. But a lot of times we fall off the wagon, and I think that's okay. We need to sort of give ourselves permission for these setbacks because it's perfectly normal. And, I can tell you just personally, I'm sort of that all or nothing type of person. So when I do something, I either want to do it 100%, and then if I do fall off the wagon, I think, well, you know, what's the point now? And then completely maybe just stop doing something. And so a lot of times I think that's maybe a little bit of that self-sabotage. So these SMART goals I think are really helpful for me just because they allow me to keep building up and not having so much of that all or nothing mentality. So, you know, just other things to consider in terms of your overall healthy diet. Oops, sorry. All right, so let's think about flavor now. A lot of times we end up eating the same foods, or we're not sure how to prepare foods to make them taste better. So I have some different examples here, and my favorite way to flavor foods is with herbs. So these are some herbs that we have from our garden. There's parsley in here, cilantro, mint, chives. All of these do really well in this weather, the cooler weather. They're thriving right now. It's so easy to grow your own herbs at home also. So I really would encourage everyone to have an herb garden. It could be a small pot, and you could just have some of these throughout the season. Go out, snip them. Even indoors, if you have a windowsill, you could put them by your garden, and that's just a really easy way to add flavor. You could freeze them also. So if you do have a lot of herbs, maybe that even you buy in the store, you don't want them to go through waste, especially because everything is so expensive right now. So you could actually preserve these. You could chop them, put them in ice cube trays with a little bit of oil or even water, and freeze them so that you could use them later. And I just love these, even the parsley itself, the leaves in salads, it's very refreshing. So it gives a really great taste to anything that you would cook. So think about, again, you could think about seasonality. Right now, we don't really have basil in our gardens, but in the summertime, it's really something that thrives. You could still buy it dried though, so that's another option, and that kind of leads us into the spices. So dried herbs are a great option also. So I would really encourage all of you to go out, look at your pantry, and think about stocking your pantry with different flavorings. So spices is another great example, and there's a tray here just of some beautiful colored spices. So hopefully you could see these. But we have things like cinnamon. This is curry powder, which is very fragrant. We have some dried oregano, a chili powder, granulated garlic and onion are also really great, especially if you don't have the, fresh garlic or fresh onion. You could always use these as a substitute. There's some chili powder, like I said. There's paprika. Smoked paprika is actually one of my favorite spices to use. It just adds a really deep flavor, very smoky. So I really like it for pretty much everything. With roasted vegetables, it's great. These are some cardamom pods, and they are a little bit pricey, but they're so fragrant, and you could actually infuse other foods in there. And I was actually talking to one of our dietetic interns here, and she said you could put them in tea and get that flavor of the cardamom without necessarily using the pod. You could put them in rice and get that infusion. So they're very fragrant, really, really great option also. So we have our spices. So again, look at your pantries, look at the spices, and you could really add a lot of depth and flavor with spices. You want to store them away from the heat, though. I know a lot of times we store our oils and spices next to the stove, but you want them to be in a cool, dry place away from the heat, and that's going to help them last longer. So sauces, this is also something that's going to add a lot of flavor. So for example, we have some soy sauce here. There's a hoisin sauce, even Worcestershire sauce. All of these add something that we call umami flavor. So umami is that fifth taste. So we have like salty, sweet, acidic, right? And then there's that umami, which gives things a full, meaty flavor. So having something like the fish sauce or the soy sauce is just a great way to add flavor without necessarily adding, maybe like cooking a steak. That's typically what we think about when we talk about umami. It's that sort of very heavy taste. You want to choose the lower sodium varieties though. That's just because these are going to be a bit high in the sodium. So choosing the lower sodium varieties, or even diluting what you already have. If you do have a regular soy sauce, you could dilute it with some water, and you're still going to get that flavor in there without necessarily having so much of the sodium in there. So stocks are also another great option. So you want to use maybe vegetable stocks or a chicken stock that's also unsalted to cook your grains, maybe some of the quinoa, your rice, and that's going to add a little bit more flavor than just plain water. The heat. So depending on whether you can eat spicy food, I'm not a big fan of, spicy food, so it depends, but you could use some chilies or even ginger, garlic. That's going to give that spiciness to your food also. And zest. One of my favorite things to do is use zest from citrus, whether it's orange, lemon, or lime, especially for vinaigrettes or even marinades. And the zest has all of the oils in there, and that's where all of the flavor is. So anytime you have a lemon, zest it. Even if you're not going to use the zest, you could freeze it and use it later. So again, like zest it, juice it if that's how you're going to use it, but reserve the zest because that's where all of the flavor is. So just some ideas on your flavorings, because you could use these, they're going to last long and they're going to really pack a lot of flavor. So when you are, starting to think about maybe changing or establishing some new goals, do take it slow. You don't want to, do everything at the same time just because, again, it may be too overwhelming. So, you want to make sure you take it slow. Think about maybe one meal at a time also. So if you're going to change your meal patterns, think about one meal that is going to be something that you could really stick to, whether it's a lunch or maybe the dinner for the whole family. Just, pick that one, work on that for a while. And then once you're comfortable with those types of changes, you could move on and think about maybe dinners. And even if it's not cooking at home every day, I know that's hard for a lot of people, try to pick some maybe once a week or twice a week, whatever works for your schedule. Just because when we cook at home, we're able to control all of the ingredients that we're using. It can be really fun. And again, another way to manage your stress, you could bring the whole family in there. Kids love to be in the kitchen. A great task for kids a lot of times is taking the leaves off of herbs. They really like doing that. So just think about how you could move to more meals so that you can actually prepare yourself. And get creative to avoid burnout. We have so many options out there, right? There are so many websites. There's recipes on social media, magazines. So there are a lot of different ways you can get inspiration to change up what you're doing already. So let's talk about some items that you could actually use to make some quick lunches. I know a lot of times you're at the store and there's so many products, it's a little bit overwhelming and you think, well, gosh, there's nothing really healthy out there. But we're going to show you that you could find some great options, especially when it comes to whole grains and legumes. We really want to eat more of these whole grains just because they're going to have more fiber in there. The same thing with any kinds of beans or legumes is that they're going to have fiber in there. They're a great source of protein and they're really inexpensive compared to meats. You're just getting so much more value when you're talking about a lot of these proteins. So we have here an example of some lentils that have already been cooked. And lentils, I know it seems like they take forever to cook, but it's a quick process, but if you don't want to bother with it, they come in a vacuum packed bag, and it's just a really great option. You could use maybe half of it if you wanted to and freeze the rest. This is another great option, and we're going to show you how we make some bowls with these, some flour bowls, but this is a quinoa and brown rice. And then this is another type of whole grain with like bulgur, and then there's some lentils in there. We have some canned beans. A good option for protein are these tuna packs. So these are really great because they're already flavored. There's different seasonings in there, and it's a good source of protein. It's a lean protein. The tuna is also, just a good source of your omega-3. So it's a really great option that you can find in the store. If you're vegan, there are options out there for meatless items. So we have some crumbles here as an example, and that's actually made out of a pea protein. So it's pretty interesting how the pea protein products are out there, and they could be a substitute for meat. I personally really like tofu. I know a lot of people don't, but one of the things I recommend is to get a tofu that has already been pressed. This tofu has been pressed, and if you see it, it's not watery at all. When you look at tofu in the store, a lot of times it's in the packaging, but it's in water, it's packed in water, and you have to press that water out. Otherwise, it doesn't really taste like anything. And I think that's, when it comes to tofu, that's one of the issues that people have, is that you're eating it straight out of the packed water, and it doesn't really taste like anything. So what you want to do in that case is press it. You could put it between plates, leave it in the refrigerator, and line some plates with paper towels and let all of that water come out. And then you can add a marinade or any other seasoning, and that's how the flavoring is going to get absorbed. But if you don't have time to press it, you can always buy this, and it's already been pressed for you. So again, it's very dense. And what I did is I crumbled a little bit of the tofu, put it in a saute pan with salt and pepper and some Italian seasoning. And then you just saute a little bit, and you could use this over a bowl or even a salad. And it's really easy. You can see it's not watery. It doesn't fall apart. So it's a really good option. And it's going to taste like anything that you put in it. So if you wanted to make it for breakfast, you could do something like this with some everything bagel seasoning. I really like that, and it tastes like scrambled eggs with that everything bagel seasoning. So again, different ways to experiment with adding more flavor. The other thing that I did earlier today was super simple, is these roasted chickpeas. And so I really like these because you could add them to salad and they give you that texture. When we're talking about food, we also want to consider texture. So sometimes we want things that are crunchy, and croutons, well, they're not terrible to eat. Maybe we can get that texture and that crouton-like feel with something that is a little bit healthier, like a chickpea that's going to give us some protein and some fiber in there. So for these chickpeas, what I actually did is that I microwaved them first. So you get a can of chickpeas, you drain it, and then you put it on a plate that has been lined with a paper towel and put them in the microwave for about 5 to 10 minutes, and they're going to dry out. And then after that, I tossed them in oil. I actually had a Southwest seasoning rub that I put on here, and then some salt and pepper, and put them in the oven at 375 degrees for about 20 minutes. And then they get a little bit more dried out. They get that nice color on there and a lot of crunch. So again, really simple things that you can do at home to add more of these flavors to foods that you already have. Sometimes I love chickpeas, but sometimes just eating them out of the can, it's boring, right? And then the texture isn't there. So doing something like this is just a really great option. So some other ideas, the grilled chicken breast, any types of frozen vegetables. Now you could even find the spiralized vegetables in the freezer. I found some spaghetti squash in the freezer not too long ago. So, just get out there to the stores and see what new products there are. But frozen vegetables are great. The power bowls, a lot of times you don't have time, and so you want to find a microwave meal. And so, there are some good options out there. What you want to do is consider how much sodium is in these meals, though, because they could be really high in the salt, but also the saturated fat. And so what we're going to do is show you how to make your own power bowls, and they're going to be just as easy as popping them in the microwave. Some other tips for your maybe breakfast or snack items are your yogurt cups. So Greek yogurt is great. It's really high in protein. There's calcium in there. With your single serve yogurt cups, you just want to make sure to take a look at the sugar. Some of them have too much added sugar. So if you can get maybe a plain variety and then add your own fruit, that's a great option too. Oatmeal cups, we found a few out there that are actually really high in your protein and fiber. So look at your labels and look at protein fiber content. Egg bites, hummus and pretzels, a handful, maybe even less of nuts is a great snack also. Some roasted chickpeas like we have here. So this could be in a meal or you could snack on these also. So again, all of these could really be still a healthy part of your diet. For your maybe lunch and dinner ideas, I love these bagged salads just because they have everything you need to make a really nice salad. So those are really good options. The dressing, some of them could be a vinaigrette style or a creamy dressing. So look for the ones that are more of a oil-based vinaigrette, and they're going to be less in that saturated fat. So when you're making a salad and you don't want to buy all of the ingredients separately, these are a really great option. There are a lot of options out there for your whole grain. So there's our pre-cooked brown rice, like we had said before, the quinoa. Those are already out there. They're a great option. Rotisserie chicken is good because you could use it for a meal and then repurpose it the following day if you have leftovers. Don't forget about your hard-boiled eggs. Those are a really great on-the-go snack. Or even if you do have maybe that salad, you could add some protein by using your hard-boiled eggs. I know they're a little bit expensive right now, but hopefully, they'll go down in price soon. The shrimp also too, and Diana was actually telling me that she likes to get that shrimp that's already been cooked, and then you put it in your lunchbox with your meal, and then it falls out by the time you're ready to eat. So again, thinking about how you can make this easier for you, less prep as possible, but still getting those really great types of foods that are going to have a good source of protein, a good source of fiber, and even your grains that are going to really be a good source of all of your vitamins that you need. So we're going to talk about some power bowls, and these are just some ideas that you could use for yourselves at home, getting some whole grains in your diet, veggies and protein. They're really balanced, and so I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do these because they're going to be really filling. So to start with, you want to, again, go to your pantry. Think about what you already have, and if you don't have any of these ingredients, consider going out and your next shopping run, get some whole grains, maybe some that are already pre-cooked. Get some protein options, so it could be canned beans, it could be some chicken, the lentils, or even tofu, whatever it is that you like. Different kinds of vegetables. So your favorite vegetables, we're going to be using some different greens here, but it could be, a lettuce. It could be even like a coleslaw mix. So whatever it is you like, just as long as you're really using more of those vegetables in your diet. That's really important. And then the sauce, so you could have a dressing, you could have maybe like some avocado in there that's a little bit of creamy. You could have a yogurt-based dressing, or even a vinaigrette. I'm going to show you how I made mine with a vinaigrette. So you want a little bit of sauce in there so it's not too dry. And then to top it off with and adding some of that crunch, you could use some nuts, whether it's pumpkin seeds, the sunflower seeds, or even almonds, and that's going to give you a little bit of crunch. It's also going to be good in that healthy fat. So that's kind of how you would build a power bowl. And we just wanted to share this recipe. It's a spiced beet and lentil salad. And this is from the Nourish cookbook. So if you are thinking about different ideas for recipes, we have a lot of really great plant-forward recipes in the Nourish cookbook. And there'll be a QR code at the end if you're interested in that. But one of the things with these lentils is that they're cooked with the cardamom, and so they're really fragrant. And the roasted beets just really make it a really filling meal. So you could eat it on its own. And honestly, when I eat something like the lentils, I don't necessarily feel like I need another type of protein. But you could add some chicken, some salmon, fish, anything that you'd like to pair it with. But yeah, so if you do have any questions, this is how you could get a hold of us. If you're interested in the cookbook, it's, again, really great with different recipes, and the photography is amazing. So you could go ahead and take a look at the QR code there. And so what we're going to do now is show you how to build a really quick bowl. Sorry. This bag of the quinoa and bulgur, it's already been cooked. I have some tuna, also a lemon pepper tuna. So I'm going to make like a Mediterranean flavored bowl with these ingredients. I also have some cannellini beans. These are, you could use white beans or the northern beans. And again, it's just going to add some more fiber in there. And this is really easy. And I have my base here, which is going to be some greens. So you could use spinach, you could use kale. This kale is actually from our garden. So I just, I love the baby kale. So I'm going to use just a little bit of this kale. And, you don't really have to do anything fancy. I'm just going to tear it up into smaller pieces. And then one of the things that I do like to do at home is I have a ton of measuring cups, and I use these as serving spoons instead of an actual measuring cup just because it helps me control the portions. So what I'm going to do is just get half a cup of the quinoa and bulgur. Just need a little bit more in here and put it over to the side. And then I'm going to get some of the beans and put those on the side also. And then my tuna, I'm going to use the whole thing. And this is a lemon pepper flavored tuna. So I thought that, I really like the citrus. And so I thought that another citrus vinaigrette would work well with this, just to marry all of the flavors. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break this up. The tuna, you want to break it up a little bit. This vinaigrette, it's olive oil. It's a 3-to-1 ratio. So your olive oil, I have some lemon juice in here. And then I just shake it up. There's Dijon vinegar in here. But you could add herbs in here. That would be really great. In fact, I'm going to add some chives also to my dish here. And so these are pretty handy little herb scissors. So you could just snip some of the chives in here. especially if you don't like raw onion. I'm not a big fan of raw onion in salads. I just think it's too strong. So I do prefer the flavor of the chives. And then I'm just going to add about a tablespoon of the citrus vinaigrette. And I'm just going to toss all of this together. So if you wanted to heat this up, you could. I kind of like for lunch, something a little colder, like just like a salad. And so I'm just going to mix this together. The vinaigrette is going to help bring everything together. It's going to help soften the kale a little bit. But because this is a baby kale, it's really tender as it is. The other thing that I have here that I'm going to add are some sun-dried tomatoes. So again, a great way to add flavor is with some, thinking about those bold flavors. So sun-dried tomatoes are really great. They're very flavorful, and especially right now where you can't get a good tomato. I like to add these in there too. Another tip with the sun-dried tomatoes is to use the oil-packed ones and use this oil as a base for your vinaigrette. So here's my bowl, and again, very simple with some greens in here. We have spinach if you wanted to add spinach also, and then some cherry tomatoes. I could quarter these and just add a little bit of more color in here, but as this is so simple, and all of the ingredients here were, very easy to get. So they're already made, pretty much cooked for us. The tuna, the quinoa, and the canned beans, excuse me. So very simple and very nutrient packed. So if you don't have time, this is definitely something that you could do in 5 minutes or less.
Okay, thank you, Dolores.
think-
I'm just going to show you guys this is kind of my emergency lunch. If I don't have leftovers, if I didn't cook, maybe it's a Monday. This is kind of like my pantry emergency lunch. So kind of taking it back to our title, making that healthy choice, the easy choice, the tasty choice. I like to use these little Seeds of Change packets. So it's quinoa and brown rice. It has garlic in it, so it's got flavor already in here. I love spinach, so I usually have it on hand, but if you don't have, I'm going to use spinach and cherry tomatoes. I like these because this is already pre-washed. You don't have to mess with it. This is just a quick rinse. And then I also love these little fully cooked chicken bites. So you can either do this or you can do the shrimp that we talked about earlier, but I love these. I get these at Costco. I keep them in the freezer. So again, you can just kind of grab your bag of grains, grab your chicken, maybe put this in a Tupperware and run out the door. And once it's lunchtime, if you have a microwave, I love a warm meal. So if you have a microwave, I like to put the spinach at the bottom so it kind of steams itself. Then we can go in with our tomatoes. And then we do some of our grains. So, I guess a serving's about half a pouch, kind of depends. So look at the back of your nutrition facts label. I usually use about half of the pouch, depending on how hungry I am, honestly. And then we just pop our chicken on top. So, if you didn't have time to pack your lunch, your options could be going to buy something, then you have to order and pay for it, etc. Or you can just build this 2-second quick bowl, pop it in the microwave for, a minute 30. And we already did one ahead of time just to show you the spinach kind of wilts down, so it kind of gets slightly steamed. The tomatoes tend to burst in the microwave, so I actually before I microwave it, I get a wet paper towel just to respect the other microwave users to catch all of the little tomato juices. So cover this, put it in the microwave, 90 seconds. The tomatoes will burst, your chicken's warm, your grains are warm, and they have this nice warm bowl for lunch, which is delicious. If you have a little more time and you want to add different vegetables, maybe a roasted vegetable from the night before, maybe a little sauce, we were thinking this would be great with a little tzatziki sauce. You can really make it your own and make it really delicious, but this is my personal emergency lunch when I really don't have time for anything. I just keep the chicken in my freezer. I keep the grains in the pantry. And if you wanted to use a frozen vegetable, that would work really well as well. So those are our bowls, and we can take it over to Rachel for some questions.
Perfect. Thank y'all so much. Thank you, Diana and Dolores, for that great demonstration and great presentation on making healthier choices. So looks like we do have a couple questions here. And just as a reminder, if anyone has more questions, just go ahead and post those in the chat. But to start us off, the first one is, can you elaborate on why there's such a bad reputation on certain oils, like cottonseed oil, for example? And I'll give y'all a minute to get situated. Let me know if I need to repeat the question.
Was that on the cottonseed oil?
Yes, yeah. So someone was wondering why certain oils like cottonseed oil might have a bad reputation as opposed to other plant-based oils like olive oil.
Right. So, a lot of that with some of the oils is they're higher in that omega-6 to omega-3 ratio. And so in this country, we tend to eat more of those omega-6. So it's always better to have, a ratio where it's more of the omega-3 oils, which are, those heart healthy. But it's a vegetable oil. And at the end of the day, if you're having a balanced diet, it's really not that bad. So, canola oil, I know a lot of people don't like to use that. We use that here a lot. So any vegetable oil is going to be a good option.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And then going back to, I think, y'all, the portion on flavor, someone was asking, are spices such as garlic powder less nutritious than actual garlic, or is there a difference there? Should people make choices, dried versions versus fresh versions?
The fresh is going to always be better, yes, but if it's still a good option to have in your pantry, especially if you run out. I know there are times when I don't have garlic, but then I'll have the ground garlic, and so I use that. So yes, fresh is always better, but in terms of just spices and ways to flavor your food, it's still a really good option. A lot of the dried spices are going to still have a lot of those compounds, like those chemical compounds that are good for you. Like the turmeric is really a great option. So they're still going to have a lot of those beneficial properties.
Perfect. Okay. And then along those same lines of the spices, someone was asking about dehydrating lemon zest. I know you said you could freeze it. Can you also dehydrate?
Yes, absolutely. That's a really good point. So you could dehydrate it in the microwave. If you have a dehydrator, you could put it in there also. So definitely, that's a good option. If you have it, well, this is not necessarily, if you're baking, let's say, not for sugar consumption for every day, you could put it in sugar and, it'll infuse the sugar also. But, not highly recommended for everyday consumption.
Got it. Just ways to get that extra flavor in.
Right, for baking or something like that.
Makes sense. All right. And then I think someone was asking, for someone who's not crazy about vegetables, maybe doesn't have any favorite vegetables, do you have any recommendations on that?
Ooh. Yeah. So one thing that I like to do is, well, I like vegetables, but sometimes kind of considering what it is that you don't like about it. A lot of people might not like the texture. It might be too crunchy. It might be, etc. So one thing that I've done that works out really well is if you're going to make something creamy, like a mac and cheese or a creamy sauce, you can actually boil some cauliflower and blend it with your a little bit of milk, or if you want to use a plant-based milk, you can actually create this creamy sauce to build your meal, and you have a little sneaky vegetable in there. So blending works really well if you want to make a soup. Kind of cook everything together in the water or in the broth, and then blend that up. Then you get your ingredients in there. If it's more flavor, a lot of times we love to recommend roasting because it just brings out a little bit of sweetness. It brings out a little bit of crunch, and it really is all about the spices that you add to it too. So there are some vegetables that will just take on whatever spices you add. So if you add a little bit of oil, whatever your favorite spice is, you can really make it whatever you want it to taste like, and then roast it in the oven. Make sure you actually roast it to get a nice golden brown, not just soft, because I feel like soft vegetables are not my favorite. So really getting that nice crunchy texture is great.
Great, that's a great tip. And then I think this will be our last question. Someone asked if there's any vegetables that are high in sugar.
No.
No, I mean, there's sugar in there, but it's not the way we think about sugar as like table sugar. So all vegetables are good, and we should just really be eating more of all of them.
Perfect.
Yeah, they'll all have a lot of fiber, especially, a lot of times I used to hear from my patients who had diabetes that they couldn't eat carrots or beets because of the sugar. But those are really hearty vegetables, which means they have a lot of fiber. So they're not gonna, whatever 5 grams of sugar, however much sugar it has, it's not gonna affect you like that same amount of sugar in a drink or in a cookie or something like that. So not something that we really worry about too much. If it is, related to diabetes, look at what else is on your plate and kind of don't play the blame game on the carrots or the beets.
Perfect. Great advice. Well, thank y'all so much for the presentation today, and thank you everyone for attending. We really appreciate you being here. Just as a reminder, this webinar recording is going to be archived on our website at msdcenter.org. And we'll also have the slides available there. So thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Have a great day.
Thank you.